It is day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend.
They referred to him as a kingmaker, a music mogul, and the ultimate hip-hop success story. But yesterday, when Cassie Ventura spoke in court, that meticulously constructed image fell apart in front of our eyes. Diddy's face went white as his ex-girlfriend described events so upsetting that when Cassie disclosed everything, that is, everything about what supposedly transpired behind closed doors, even the most seasoned courtroom reporters were rendered speechless. The guy who previously ruled an empire was unable to control his emotions.
They called him a music mogul, a kingmaker, the ultimate success story in hip-hop. But yesterday, as Cassie Ventura took the stand in court, that carefully crafted image crumbled right before our eyes. Diddy's face turned pale as his ex-girlfriend detailed incidents so disturbing that even the most seasoned courtroom reporters were left speechless. The man who once controlled an empire couldn't control his reactions as Cassie revealed everything, and we mean everything, about what allegedly happened behind closed doors.
When she walked in there, Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs.
Interview 054154 for decades, Sean. Diddy Combs walked through the music industry like he owned it because he practically did the man-built Bad Boy Records from nothing, turned artists into superstars, and created a brand that expanded beyond music into fashion, vodka, and media. On paper, Diddy was the ultimate success story, the guy who showed everyone how to turn hip-hop into. Cassie's testimony begins, and Diddy's initial reactions serious business money, but that perfect image, that carefully crafted persona of business, genius mentor, and music visionary, it was hiding something much darker. If you believe what's coming out in court right now, while magazines put him on covers for his business moves, while fans cheered his performances, while everyone saw his polished, red carpet smile, Cassie Ventura was reportedly living a completely different reality. The contrast was shocking to everyone in that courtroom yesterday. Here's a man who presents himself as the ultimate professional in public custom suits perfect. Grooming always saying the right thing in interviews, but the allegations, they paint a picture of someone completely different behind closed doors, someone unrecognizable to fans who only knew his public face. Court reporters noted how Diddy arrived. For day 2, looking exactly like the billionaire mogul we all recognize. He walked in surrounded by his team of high-priced lawyers, nodding confidently to people in the courtroom. Even smiling occasionally, the man looked like he was heading to a business meeting, not facing serious allegations from his ex-girlfriend. That confidence, it didn't last long. Multiple witnesses described how Diddy's whole demeanor changed within the first 30 minutes of Cassie's testimony. The swagger disappeared. The confidence evaporated. The calm business face started showing cracks as Cassie began describing specific incidents from their relationship. Diddy's legal team jumped up with objections repeatedly, almost desperately trying to stop her words. Can you imagine this? The man who built a billion-dollar empire, who controlled the careers of countless artists, who negotiated massive business deals, suddenly unable to control his own reactions in a courtroom? Witnesses described how Diddy couldn't sit still as Cassie spoke. The power dynamic had completely flipped when Cassie actually took the stand. People in the courtroom couldn't take their eyes off Diddy. His face reportedly drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. He started fidgeting, with his tie, then his cufflinks, then just his hands. At one point, court observers noticed him frantically writing notes and passing them to his lawyers. The notes came so fast that one of his attorneys had to put a hand up to slow him down one. Court reporter described it as watching someone realize they've lost control of the narrative for the first time in their life. Another person present said Diddy looked physically ill as Cassie calmly detailed their relationship. A third witness mentioned seeing Diddy close his eyes several times like he couldn't bear to look at Cassie or hear what she was saying. And this was just the beginning. As Cassie's testimony continued through the afternoon, the courtroom would soon discover exactly Why Diddy couldn't keep his cool, the specific allegation she was about to make would send shockwaves through the entire music industry and potentially destroy the legacy Diddy spent decades building. The man who always controlled the story was about to face a version he couldn't edit or produce. Interview 5/16/7/51.
They called him a music mogul, a kingmaker, the ultimate success story in hip-hop. But yesterday, as Cassie Ventura took the stand in court, that carefully crafted image crumbled right before our eyes. Diddy's face turned pale as his ex-girlfriend detailed incidents so disturbing that even the most seasoned courtroom reporters were left speechless. The man who once controlled an empire couldn't control his reactions as Cassie revealed everything, and we mean everything, about what allegedly happened behind closed doors.
When she walked in there, Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their 10-year relationship.
For decades, Sean Diddy Combs walked through the music industry like he owned it, because he practically did. The man built bad boy records from nothing, turned artists into superstars, and created a brand.
She actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yeah, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of...
51, when Cassie Ventura took the stand, you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Everyone knew this moment was coming, but nobody. Not even Diddy's legal team was truly ready for what she was about to say. After years of staying quiet, years of holding these stories inside, Cassie finally had her day to speak, and speak. She did. She started small. That's what made it so effective. Cassie began by describing how she met Diddy. When she was just 19 years old, he was already a major player in the music industry, a millionaire many times over with connections everywhere. She was a young model hoping for a music career. The power difference was massive from day one, and according to Cassie, Diddy knew exactly how to use that power. Her testimony built slowly like a horror movie where you know something bad is coming but can't look away. First came the smaller control issues, how he allegedly demanded to know her whereabouts at all times, how he would show up unexpectedly if she was out with friends. Then came the career control, how she claims he would threaten to shove her music if she didn't comply with his demands, how he allegedly sabotaged collaborations with other artists if he felt threatened. The most shocking part, court transcripts show. Cassie described how Diddy allegedly installed tracking software on her phone. She testified that he would sometimes call her minutes after she arrived somewhere, knowing exactly where she was. She claimed he gradually cut her off from friends who might put ideas in her head about leaving him one by one. Her support system allegedly disappeared until Diddy was all she had. The judge had to call for order 3 separate times. During this part of the testimony, Diddy couldn't seem to control himself. He was shaking his head, whispering loudly to his lawyers, making faces that the jury could clearly see each time the judge warned him. He'd compose himself for 5 minutes. Before starting again, it was like watching someone who's never been told no suddenly realize they can't control the situation. Then came the moment that changed everything. Cassie pulled out her phone and handed it to her attorney. They projected text messages and emails onto a screen for the entire court to see. The look on Diddy's face, pure shock. He clearly had no idea she had kept these messages all these years. Messages where he allegedly apologized for violent outbursts, messages where he supposedly threatened her career if she told anyone what happened. Messages that directly contradicted statements his PR team had been putting out for years. But those messages were just the warm-up. As Cassie continued her testimony, she began describing physical assaults that allegedly took place throughout their relationship. The courtroom went completely silent as she detailed being thrown against walls during arguments. She described an incident where she claims he pushed her down a flight of stairs at a rental house in Miami. Most disturbing of all, she testified about multiple occasions where he allegedly choked her until she nearly lost consciousness. Only stopping when she would go limp, several jurors visibly reacted. To these allegations, one older woman on the jury was seen wiping tears. A male juror couldn't maintain eye contact with Diddy after some of the more graphic descriptions. The most seasoned reporters in that courtroom admitted they were unprepared for the level of detail in Cass's testimony. And all of this was just leading up to the hotel incident that would blow this case wide open. Interview 11/16/1339. I thought I was going to die that night. Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper, as the courtroom leaned forward to hear every word she was describing an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel.
Seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm gonna be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's gonna be interesting to watch is, you know, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about, was this her choice, or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that's when she got emotional. When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
I thought I was going to die that night, Cassie said. Her voice...
As the courtroom leaned forward to hear every word, she was describing an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel that nobody, not the press, not the fans, not even the gossip blogs, had ever heard about before. This hotel incident had stayed buried for years. Cassie explained how she'd kept it secret out of fear. Fear for her career, fear for her safety, and fear that nobody would believe her over someone as powerful as Diddy. But now, sitting on that witness stand, she wasn't holding anything back, according to Cassie. What started as a normal industry afterparty turned into a nightmare. She testified that Diddy became enraged after seeing her talking to another music executive. She described how his smile disappeared, how he grabbed her arm so hard it left marks, and how he whispered threats in her ear while maintaining his public face in front of others at the event. The most shocking part. Cassie told the court that Diddy literally dragged her through the hotel lobby to the elevators. She said she was crying and trying to pull away, making enough of a scene that hotel security approached them. But the security guard backed off when he recognized Diddy. He just asked if everything was okay. And when Mr. Combs said yes, he walked away. He didn't even ask me if I was okay. Cassie testified. Then came the photos. Cassie's lawyer presented a series of images she had taken of herself the morning after the incident, bruises on her arms, a split lip redness around her neck. These weren't professional photos, they were shaky, clearly taken in a bathroom mirror, which somehow made them even more disturbing. Cassie explained she took them because she was afraid nobody would believe her. Otherwise, Diddy's legal team jumped into action, trying everything to keep these photos from being shown to the jury. They argued the photos weren't properly authenticated, that they could have been from anything that they should have been submitted. During discovery, the judge denied every objection, and the photos were displayed on the courtroom screens. The jury's reaction said everything. One female juror physically covered her mouth in shock. 2 male jurors couldn't even look at the images, turning their heads away. A juror in the back row was seen writing frantically. In her notebook, her hand shaking. This hotel incident was the bombshell nobody saw coming. There had been no mention of it in previous statements or filings. Diddy's team had no prepared response because they didn't know it was coming. The look of panic on his lawyers' faces was obvious to everyone in the courtroom. Cassie described how Diddy allegedly threw a champagne bottle at her head, missing her by inches, and shattering against the wall. She testified that he destroyed the hotel room, in a rage, breaking a lamp, flipping a table, and punching a hole in the bathroom door. Most disturbing of all, she claimed he prevented her from leaving the room for over 48 hours, taking her phone and threatening consequences if she tried to call for help. As this part of the testimony ended, everyone in that courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His reaction would become the moment that defined the entire trial and possibly the rest of his career. Interview 1645, 1933. It was the moment nobody in that courtroom will ever forget. Diddy.
She was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, "I know, you don't want to do it." And she said, "Oh no, well, it's not that." But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
Well, Diane, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, "He would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down." She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they happened so frequently it eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared that Combs would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. And she's had at times to take, she's taken deep breaths, pausing her testimony, Combs appearing to be listening pretty passively with his hands in his lap at the defense table there.
When Cassie...
What does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today, she broke down in that courtroom.
It was the moment nobody in that courtroom will ever forget. Diddy,
the man who built an empire on his ability to stay cool under pressure, completely lost it right in front of everyone. The facade cracked, then shattered. And what was underneath wasn't pretty. You have to understand, this is a guy who spent decades perfecting his public image. The smooth-talking businessman, the calm, collected mogul, the man who never lets you see him sweat. But as Cassie's testimony reached its most damaging points, that carefully maintained mask started slipping court reporters, who've covered hundreds of celebrity cases, said they'd never seen anything like it. Diddy literally transformed before their eyes, from the confident industry titan who walked in that morning to a man who looked cornered and desperate. As the afternoon wore on with each new allegation Cassie made, he seemed to physically shrink in his chair. His legal team was working overtime. I heard from someone who was sitting right behind them that Diddy's main attorney kept putting his hand on Diddy's arm, trying to calm him down. At one point, one of the lawyers actually passed him a note that reportedly said, "Stay calm" in all capital letters, but it wasn't working. When Cassie recounted an incident at his Hampton home, Diddy became so irate that he slammed his hand down on the table. The sound reverberated throughout the courtroom, prompting the judge to halt proceedings and issue a warning. "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom." For a moment, it looked like he might actually get thrown out of his own trial. Throughout Cassie's testimony, witnesses saw Diddy constantly shaking his head and mouthing, "That's not true." Whenever she described something particularly damaging, it was like he forgot there was a jury watching his every reaction. One courtroom observer said it looked like a man who had never been called out before, suddenly realizing he couldn't control the narrative. The power shift in that room was incredible. For their entire relationship, Diddy allegedly controlled everything about Cassie's life. Now she was speaking her truth and he couldn't stop her. He couldn't cut her mic. He couldn't have security remove her. He couldn't spin it through his PR team. He just had to sit there and take it. But the real breaking point came when Cassie started talking about threats. She testified that Diddy had allegedly threatened her family if she ever spoke about what happened between them. And then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. She had recordings. Actual audio recordings of his voice making these threats that her lawyer played for the court. That's when Diddy completely lost it. He shot up from his chair and shouted directly at Cassie, "You know, that's not how it happened." As he attempted to speak over the recording playing in the courtroom, his legal team physically grabbed him and tried to get him to return to his seat. The judge then called for a recess, but the damage had already been done when they led Diddy out for the recess. He looked completely different from the person who had entered that morning. The mask was gone, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. Just when everyone thought they had heard it all, the real bombshell dropped. Cassie had evidence that no one had anticipated, not even Diddy. She had been secretly gathering proof of what she claimed happened during their relationship for years, and no one had noticed, not even Diddy. Places where Diddy couldn't find them or delete them. The courtroom went completely silent when Cassie mentioned she had text messages from other celebrities who had witnessed Diddy's behavior. Firsthand, these weren't just random industry people either. According to court transcripts, these were some of Diddy's closest friends and business associates. People who had been in his inner circle for years, who had seen things at private parties and backstage at events that the public never knew about. Diddy's face said it all. A person sitting in the gallery described him as looking physically ill. When Cassie mentioned these celebrity witnesses, his legal team immediately jumped up, objecting loudly and demanding a sidebar. With the judge, they argued these messages shouldn't be allowed as evidence that they were hearsay, that they weren't. Properly submitted during discovery, the judge wasn't having it. After reviewing the messages in private, he returned to the courtroom and overruled all objections, calling the messages highly relevant to the case and allowing them to be entered into evidence. That decision alone caused Diddy to put his head in his hands. He knew what was coming. One by one, messages from famous names appeared on the courtroom screens. A major rapper had texted Cassie after a Grammy after-party. "You okay, what? I saw tonight wasn't right, you can stay at my place if you need to." A female pop star had written, "I've known him for 15 years and I've never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal, please call me." After witnessing an altercation at a studio, a longtime producer who had worked with Diddy for decades sent Cassie the most damaging texts. "I can't be around this anymore. Tell him to get help and call me when you're safe." These messages completely contradicted what Diddy had been saying publicly, that no one had ever witnessed inappropriate behavior, that these were private matters being twisted by Cassie. Now the court could see that people had witnessed incidents, had been concerned, had reached out to help her. Then came Diddy's own messages. Screenshots showed texts where he appeared to acknowledge incidents. "I'm sorry about last night. You know how I get when I drink, it won't happen again." Another text from him read, Whatever you need to make this right, just name it a new car or an apartment of your choice. A third message series showed what looked like attempts to keep incidents quiet through financial offers. My lawyer can draw up the paperwork tomorrow. $2 million clean break. You don't talk about anything from the past 5 years as these messages were read aloud. Something interesting happened in the gallery. Several people who had arrived with Diddy that morning, members of his entourage who had been sitting behind him in support, quietly got up and left the courtroom. They slipped out one by one, unable to continue sitting there as the evidence mounted by the time this part of testimony ended. Diddy was sitting almost alone at his table, just him and his legal team. The show of support he'd walked in with that morning had evaporated. The evidence no one saw coming had changed everything. As day 2 wrapped up, the man who walked into court as music's untouchable king left looking defeated. The security team around him couldn't protect him from what just happened in that courtroom. The empire he spent decades building might be crumbling in real time. Cassie Ventura didn't just tell her story today. She potentially rewrote Diddy's entire legacy. The evidence, the testimony, the recordings, it all painted a picture nobody can unsee. The question isn't whether Diddy can win this case anymore, it's whether his reputation can ever recover from what the world heard in that courtroom.